mean, the reason why the oligarchs put their money in our country in the first place is because we have the rule of law. And just taking people's property away is something that is very difficult and quite rightly.
The government is working on plans to seize billions of pounds in frozen oligarchs' assets. The Home Office is said to be considering legislation that would allow the use of oligarchs' wealth to fund a plan to rebuild Ukraine. Well, let's speak to Oliver Bullough, who's an investigative journalist and author of Butler to the World and Moneyland. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell us a little bit more about these government plans.
Well, I mean, I only know what you know, which is what's in the paper this morning. And on the face of it, it all looks very sensible. The Russian government has done a colossal amount of damage to Ukraine. The Russian oligarchs are propping up the Russian government, and they have wealth here and in other big Western countries. So if we take away their money, we can use it to rebuild Ukraine. I mean, it all seems very logical. That, I think, is essentially as far as the plan goes. There's no details, because once you get past the details, this all gets very, very complicated indeed. I mean, the reason why the oligarchs put their money in our country in the first place is because we have the rule of law. And just taking people's property away is something that is very difficult, and quite rightly very difficult, and something that in previous cases have been very difficult. This is why there has never been a single successful investigation into oligarchs' wealth in Britain since the fall of communism. So I'm, though heartened that they're discussing this, I'm afraid this, to my mind, until I see rather more fleshed out proposals, comes under the heading of the usual gimmicks that the government is throwing out there to show how much they're doing to help Ukraine.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask about, how feasible these plans are and if it's even legal, because I'm guessing there would be some kind of legal pushback through the courts if the government tried to do this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there would. You can't. I mean, they've tried to do, say, an unexplained wealth order, which isn't even a confiscation order. It's just an investigative tool, which was brought against not a Russian oligarch, but the daughter of the former president of Kazakhstan. And she fought back with everything she'd got, and the National Crime Agency lost, humiliatingly lost. So this is very much not easy. And I mean, we needed to ask, is this right? Do we want to be taking away people's property without, convicting them of a crime? That's a second point. And then the third point, which I think is the really important one, is this going to help, right? Is the amount of money oligarchs have got, is it a big number? The estimate of how much damage is being done to Ukraine is running at about $5 billion a week. So cumulatively, we're certainly talking in the hundreds of billions. And who knows how long this war lasts? We may be getting up into the, $500 billion, perhaps even as close as $1 trillion of damage being done to Ukraine. The oligarchs are rich, but they're nowhere near that rich. I mean, we're talking about, there will be a drop in the ocean, their wealth, compared to that kind of damage. I would say that a far more useful use of the government's time and a far more useful use of the resources that are going to be putting into this would be just resourcing the National Crime Agency to use the laws we have to do what it should already be able to do. It is... These gimmicks, they're just, we've heard about from Michael Gove about putting refugees in oligarchs' mansions. We hear them every now and then, every couple of weeks, a new idea for how to deal with the oligarchs, and nothing ever comes of them. So it would be really lovely if instead of throwing out this sort of chaff like an aeroplane flows out to deter, the missiles coming after it, they started actually doing the substantive, boring, hard work of making the laws we already have actually work. Because doing what the oligarchs have done and are doing is already illegal. We don't need to invent new laws to prosecute them.
Well, explain that to us. Explain the laws we have and why they're not being implemented.
Well, I mentioned unexplained wealth orders. One of the reasons it's hard to go after oligarchs is the crimes that they tend to have committed have been in other countries, so they will rely on the Russian legal system to defend them here. But an unexplained wealth order flips that on its head. If you have an unexplained wealth order against you, you have to justify why your wealth is legal. It's not up to the Met or the National Crime Agency to justify why it's illegal. That is why these were seen as a silver bullet against oligarchs when they were brought in 5 years ago. Sadly, because the National Crime Agency is so under-resourced, they've never had the ability to use these in the scale that they originally intended. And as I said, the only time they've really gone head toe-to-toe with a sort of gold-class, politically collected person from the former Soviet Union, Dariga Nazarbayeva, they lost, and they lost really badly. So what they need is resourcing and political cover and money to do the investigations they need, to use tools like the Unexplained Wealth Order, which is already a draconian law, and it's already a law that allows you to take away or sort of, as it were, remove the traditional protections around property. We don't need new ones. We just need the enforcement of the ones we already have. And so it's again and again and again, I'm afraid we see from this government, not just this government, other governments, but particularly this government, this focus on, inverted commas, announceables. They're always looking for, what can we win the headlines with today or this week? And they don't think what will actually alter the situation next year or in
Okay.
5 years' time or in 10 years' time.
Oliver, thank you so much for coming on and explaining that to us. Oliver Bullough there, he's an investigative journalist and author of Butler to the World and Moneyland.